Before we dive in, let me know in the comments. What country are you watching from? I'd love to see where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. I still hear the voices when the ocean is calm, soft and low, like whispers hidden in the tide. Back then, I thought it was just the engines humming or the wind sliding through the decks. I didn't realize what I was walking into when I boarded that ship. My name is Daniel Reed. I'm a history teacher from Charleston, South Carolina. I had saved for 2 years to finally take this trip, a 2-week cruise through the Caribbean. It was supposed to be my escape from lectures, essays, and the quiet of an empty house I returned to each night. My wife had passed 3 years earlier, and I thought maybe sunlight, the sea, and a little change of place would help ease the weight that never left my chest. The first day was exactly what I had hoped. Bright pools, smiling faces, and drinks that hit harder than they looked. My cabin was small but comfortable, with a porthole showing nothing but endless blue water. That first night, lying in bed, I listened to the rhythm of waves tapping against the hull and thought I might finally rest, but then something tugged at me. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a sound I couldn't explain. It wasn't the ship creaking or settling into the sea. It was different, like a low chant, faint and echoing, as though carried through the vents. I told myself it was drunk passengers singing late on a balcony, but deep inside, something told me it wasn't. The next morning, I asked a crew member about it. They smiled too quickly and brushed it off. "Just the engines, sir. You'll get used to it." Their tone was polite, but their eyes slid away from mine. Later, during a talk in the lounge about the history of the ship, the cruise director mentioned it had once been a cargo ship before being rebuilt for passengers. That detail shouldn't have mattered, but it sank into me. Cargo ships aren't for comfort. They're for weight, storage, carrying things. And I wondered for just a moment what exactly this ship had carried before. That night, the chanting returned. Louder this time. Closer. I pressed my ear to the wall, and I swear I heard words. Not English. Not anything familiar. The sounds were older, wetter, shaped like crashing waves turned into a language. When I stepped into the hallway, it was empty. Too empty. The silence felt heavy, like the whole ship was holding its breath. By the third night, I stopped even trying to sleep. Instead, I followed the sound barefoot, slipping through hallways, down stairwells that smelled of rust and damp rope. The voices grew clearer the deeper I went. My pulse hammered so hard I thought it would give me away. And then I found it. At the bottom of a service stairwell, a door that didn't belong. It wasn't on the ship's maps I'd studied earlier. No sign, no handle, just a black iron door streaked with salt stains. Behind it, the chanting rose like a rising tide. I froze. And then, like they sensed me, the voices stopped. That silence was worse than the sound. I backed away, step by careful step, until I was back in my cabin. But I couldn't shake the thought that whatever was behind that door now knew I was there. The next morning at breakfast, I overheard 2 passengers whispering. A woman leaned close and said, "Another one didn't come back last night." Her companion hushed her, but I had already heard. My spoon trembled in my hand. Passengers were disappearing, and I had already found the place where the voices gathered. I couldn't ignore the door anymore. Every groan of the ship, every sigh of wind through the portholes seemed to push me toward it. That night I left my cabin again, heart racing so hard it drowned out my thoughts. The halls were darker than usual, as if the ship itself was waiting. The air carried the sting of salt mixed with a metallic tang, like blood. My bare feet left prints on the steel floor, prints I knew would fade before morning. When I reached the door, I saw faint markings scratched into the metal, swirls and curves that seemed to move on their own, glowing dimly as if alive. The chanting began again, louder, pressing against me. I should have run, locked myself away, called for help. But fear or curiosity pushed me closer. The door wasn't locked in any normal way. When I pressed my palm against it, the symbols warmed under my skin, glowing faintly. A pressure pushed outward, heavy like water, trying to shove me back. But slowly, impossibly, the door opened. Inside was a chamber that stank of low tide, damp and rotting. Shadows stretched too far across the walls, moving though no wind stirred them. Lanterns flickered, throwing strange patterns across the stone floor. In the center, a circle was carved, filled with seawater. Shapes moved within it, blurred, like people submerged but never quite surfacing. At first, I thought they were reflections, but they weren't. They were alive, trapped. Their chanting rose and fell in a rhythm that matched my own heartbeat. And then I saw the crew. They stood around the circle, hands out, heads bowed, but their faces weren't right. Their eyes were black hollows, their skin pale and waxy, their mouths twitching with faint, unnatural smiles. I stumbled backward. A single beam of light fell across a figure in the middle of the circle. A passenger, pale, limp, eyes wide open. And then a hand burst from the water, gripping the edge, pulling him down in an instant. The surface rippled once, then went still. The chanting stopped. Silence dropped heavy as stone. That was when I saw the captain, standing calm at the entrance of the chamber, watching. "You shouldn't be here," the captain said. His voice wasn't loud, yet it filled the room completely. "The sea remembers. The ship chooses its offerings." My mouth opened, but my throat was dry, words refusing to come out. Finally, I forced a whisper. "Why? Why are you doing this?" His smile was thin, almost ghostly. "Not we, the ship. It demands. We only serve until it takes what it is owed." The words hit me harder than any storm wave. This wasn't superstition, wasn't some silly ghost story told to scare passengers at night. This was real, a ritual. The ship itself was alive, feeding, and I was standing right in the middle of it. A sound behind me made me turn. Another passenger, someone I'd seen at dinner, stepped from the shadows. Their eyes were blank, their hands folded neatly. They didn't speak, but I understood the warning. If I moved closer, if I stayed, I would be next. My legs shook as I backed away, tripping over a rope that seemed to slide across the floor like it had a mind of its own. The captain's eyes never blinked, never left me. Then the floor beneath the circle rippled, alive, the water rising into a wave that rushed toward me. Cold and heavy, it nearly knocked me down. I stumbled, scrambled backward, and slammed the black door shut. For a long while I pressed against it, chest heaving, fingers gripping the metal. The chanting was gone. Only the ship's groan remained, low and endless, as the storm raged outside. By the next morning, 3 more passengers were gone. Their cabins empty, beds untouched, belongings missing as if they had never existed. When I asked the crew, they only smiled. Too polite, too calm, their eyes dark with secrets. That was when I understood. The ship wasn't cursed. It wasn't haunted. It was alive. It was hungry. And it had already noticed me. I couldn't keep hiding. I could feel it watching me. The ship had tasted my fear, and every step I took echoed along the halls like a call. The passengers left seemed slower now, dull, their eyes vacant, whispering words I couldn't understand. I needed answers. I had to know why the ship demanded lives, why the crew had turned into what they had become. So I went back, down into the service decks, staying in the shadows. The smell of salt, metal, and rust met me before I even saw it. The black metal door waited, the same door, the same whispers. When I stepped inside, the circle pulsed with water again. But this time, there were more. Dozens of figures, half submerged, arms reaching, claws scraping upward, their mouths open in silent cries. The chanting rose slowly, layered voices blending, echoing. I realized it wasn't from one place. It was the chamber itself, alive with hundreds of voices. Voices of the passengers who had already vanished. The captain stood at the edge, hands behind his back, calm like he was supervising. Around him, the crew formed a ring. And then I saw the truth. They weren't holding anyone down. They were feeding them. Every hand motion, every nod drained life out of the trapped passengers and into the ship. It hit me in a wave of sickening clarity. The ship wasn't only alive, it was being nourished. Every disappearance gave it strength, helped it survive the endless storms, the waves, the lightning, the long horizon. This was the ritual, the offering, the hunger that never ended. I stumbled backward, nearly falling into the circle. My breath caught as I saw it. My name. My own name. appearing in the rippling water at the edge of the circle. Not carved, not written in ink, but forming on its own, as though the ship itself was writing me into its record. "No," I whispered. The water responded with a ripple, a wave licking the edge like acknowledgement, like invitation. My stomach twisted. I turned to run, but a hand landed on my shoulder. I froze. It was one of the crew, my waiter, the man who had greeted me on the first day with a warm smile. His eyes were black pits now, his voice low. "It's your turn," he said. Not a threat, a statement, a command. Panic filled me. I tore away and ran, weaving through corridors, downstairs, avoiding the main decks. I searched wildly, lifeboats, doors, anything to escape. But the storm wasn't normal. It moved with the ship, sealing exits with waves, splitting the sky with lightning that crashed into barriers. It was like the ocean itself was reshaping to trap me inside. Finally, I broke onto the observation deck. The horizon stretched endlessly in all directions. No land, no hope, just endless black water. Then I saw them. Shapes beneath the waves, passengers who had vanished, their pale faces pressed against the surface, mouths open as though they were screaming, warning. The ship moaned, the storm howled. And then I realized the truth I hadn't wanted to admit. There was no escape. The ship had claimed me before I even stepped aboard. Every look, every step, every shiver of fear, it had already bound me. The storm wasn't weather. It was the ship itself shaping the sea to keep me in. A door creaked at the far end of the deck. The captain appeared, calm as ever, lifting a hand toward me. "Join us, Daniel." The sea remembers. The ship provides. You belong here now. I screamed and ran, but the water surged. The deck twisted, pulling me toward the edge. The sea rose like a living wall and swallowed me whole. Silence. And then I opened my eyes. I was back in my cabin, the ocean calm, the sunlight bright. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare, until I saw the logbook on the desk. It was open, its pages blank except for one line: Daniel taken. The door creaked, followed by 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My body froze. The ship wasn't finished with me. The knocks came again, steady and patient, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I wanted to throw myself through the porthole, escape into the sea, but my body wouldn't move. My mind raced for a way out, a loophole, a mistake. But I knew what was coming. The door opened by itself, inch by inch. No hand, no push. Just the quiet swing of something that wanted me. The hallway glowed red, stretching too far, impossibly long. And there was the captain, calm as ever, smiling faintly. Behind him the crew waited, half human, half something else. Eyes black as coal, watching. "You're part of it now," he said softly. "Every fear, every step, every thought of running brought you here." I stumbled back, pressing against the wall. My cabin was shifting, bending, the floor groaning like it carried weight too heavy to see. The walls pulsed with life. The horizon outside the window rippled like the ocean itself was breathing. Then I felt it, cold liquid sliding over my feet. I looked down. The floor wasn't solid anymore. It flowed like black water, shapes swirling inside, faces screaming without sound. The chanting returned, louder, everywhere inside me. "This isn't real," I whispered, shaking, covering my ears. But the ship ignored me. The floor tilted, and I fell forward. The logbook slid across the cabin, pages flapping like caught in a storm only I could feel. Words bled onto the page in dripping ink. Daniel taken. "Welcome to the crew." A cold hand closed around mine. Strong, unhuman. My heart froze. I couldn't pull away. Shapes rose from the floor, mouths, arms, claws, pulling me in. My scream vanished into the ship itself. The captain knelt before me, his eyes black but calm, commanding. "This is not death, Daniel," he said. "It is continuation. You serve. The sea provides. The ship remembers." I tried to fight back. I kicked, punched, struggled, but nothing worked. The crew drew closer. Dark shadows curled around my legs, pulling me down like chains. The air grew thick, heavy, with the taste of salt, rust, and something metallic I couldn't name. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, or thought I did, I was on the observation deck. The sun blazed against calm water, endless and blue. The ship looked like a normal cruise again. For a moment, I believed maybe it had all been a nightmare. Maybe I was free. But then I noticed the logbook lying open. Its pages were empty, except for one fresh line of ink. Daniel, next voyage. My chest tightened. A soft knocking echoed behind me. 3 slow, steady knocks. The porthole fogged as though something pressed against it from the outside. I turned, heart pounding, and for a split second I saw myself. Skin gray, eyes glassy, smiling the same hollow smile as the captain. That was when I understood. The ship doesn't stop. The storm never ends. And now I was part of it. So if you ever take a cruise and the ocean feels too still, the air too heavy, and the smiles too perfect, remember me. And remember this, the ship is watching and it always remembers. Welcome aboard. Story 2, I never believed in curses. Ghost stories were for campfires and late-night videos, not for real life. That was before I boarded the Aurora Tide. My name is Laia Martinez. I'm a freelance photographer from Miami, and I had signed up for this Caribbean cruise to capture sunsets and ship interiors for a travel magazine. I wanted bright colors, happy people, and peace, not nightmares. The first day was perfect. Sunlight bounced off the decks, families laughed at the pool, and the crew greeted everyone with practiced smiles. I carried my camera everywhere, taking pictures of the grand dining hall, the railings, the ocean stretching far beyond the bow. Everything looked normal, too normal. That night, the first odd thing happened. While reviewing my photos, I noticed something. A man appeared in every shot from dinner, smiling politely. But when I checked the dining list, he wasn't on it. When I looked back at the room itself, he wasn't there either. At first, I thought my camera had glitched. But at breakfast the next morning, a child giggled and pointed at him. "That's funny, Mommy. I don't remember him last night." My stomach dropped. The crew ignored my questions. They smiled, but their eyes flicked nervously toward the upper decks, then back to me, whispering quietly. That evening, I wandered up toward the highest deck. The sunset lit the sky in red and gold, the ocean glowing endlessly. A faint whisper curled on the wind, brushing my ears. I thought it was my imagination until a tall figure stood behind me at the railing. Still, silent. I called out, but got no reply. Only the crash of waves. I left unsettled, returning to my cabin. That night, the whispers grew stronger, flowing through the vents like the ship itself was speaking in a language I couldn't understand. My photos changed too. They began to show things I hadn't taken. Doors that weren't real, staircases twisting impossibly, passengers with faces blurred or missing, their eyes dark and empty. By the third night, reality bent further. Passengers I had spoken with were suddenly gone, their names never mentioned again. The ship stretched itself, hallways longer, stairs steeper, corridors turning like a maze. The crew never admitted it. The captain's announcement sounded hollow, as though he was reading a script from another world. Then I found the journal, a leather-bound book hidden beneath a floorboard in the lounge. It smelled of salt and rust, pages warped with damp. Inside were names, dates, and photos that looked disturbingly like mine. Entry after entry described storms that never ended, passengers disappearing, crew members changing, rituals in hidden chambers. The final entry was dated the day before my voyage. The new passenger will see what the ship knows. The offering begins. My blood ran cold. The wind rattled the portholes. And in the lounge shadows, I felt something watching me, waiting. That was when I realized this was no ordinary cruise. The Aurora Tide wasn't just a ship, it was a predator. And tonight, it had chosen me. I couldn't stop thinking about the journal. Every word carved itself into my mind. Each photo, each name repeating like a warning. The ship wasn't built for passengers. It was alive, hunting, and I was already inside its jaws. That night, I waited until most people had gone to their cabins. I slipped out with my camera, following the twisting halls deeper into the lower decks. The vents whispered, carrying voices half human, half something else, urgent and strange. The corridors grew colder, damp. The air smelled of seaweed and iron. I felt resistance with every step, like the ship itself was trying to push me back. But I had to know. At the end of one corridor, I found a stairwell not shown on any deck plan. Its metal steps spiraled down into shadow. The chanting began, faint at first, then louder, pulsing with my heartbeat. I descended, each step echoing in the silence. The stairwell opened into a wide chamber. Lanterns flickered on the walls, their light sliding across ancient curling symbols carved deep into the surface. In the center was a shallow pool of water. It rippled unnaturally, though no wind touched it. Shapes writhed beneath the surface. Passengers I knew, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. Some stretched out their arms toward me. Others just floated silently, broken. Around the pool, the crew stood in a perfect circle, chanting in one voice. Their eyes black, their expressions calm but inhuman, their hands raised like conductors guiding the water itself. The captain towered above them, steady and cold, his stare like a weight pressing into me. My throat tightened. The journal hadn't lied. This was the ritual, the feeding, and I had walked straight into it. I tried to back away, but a force, invisible yet heavy, pushed me forward. My camera slipped from my grip, crashing to the floor. I froze as the captain's voice spread across the chamber, low and steady. You shouldn't be here, but the ship has chosen you. Everyone it touches is never gone. You will see. You will serve. The water surged upward, forming hands, long and cold, clawing their way toward me. I stumbled backward, but the floor seemed to shift under me, twisting so that my feet were forced closer to the pool. Panic surged through me. I snatched a lantern from the wall and swung it wildly, desperate to break whatever this was. The shadows hissed and pulled back for a moment, but then rushed at me again, faster, stronger. That was when I realized the awful truth. The ship wasn't just eating people. It was feeding on attention, fear, awareness. Every time I looked at the shadows, every beat of my terrified heart made it stronger. Then I saw it, my own face forming in the water. My skin pale, my eyes wide, my mouth locked in a silent scream, my chest clenched. I knew if I stayed another second, I would be swallowed whole. I bolted up the stairs, running through corridors that twisted longer with every step. The whispers chased me, curling into my ears, tugging at my thoughts. Behind me, the chanting grew louder, almost celebratory, like the ship was laughing at my fear. I burst onto the main deck, gasping, sweat and salt soaking my clothes. The horizon was black, storm clouds swirling endlessly, lightning splitting the sea into sharp flashes. The ship groaned like it was alive, bending against the waves. I didn't know if I would survive until morning. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide. But the truth struck me. The ship was everywhere, the air, the wind, the water. It had already claimed me. I never slept that night. Every creak, every splash, every whisper outside my porthole reminded me the aurora tide knew I was awake. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, pale, hollow-eyed, lips pressed like it wanted to warn me. There's no escape. By dawn, I made a plan. I needed proof, something real to take back, something no one could ignore. My camera had survived. I stuffed it into my bag and started for the lower decks, determined to capture what I had seen. But the ship wasn't the same. Hallways bent into impossible angles. Staircases twisted downward. Doors appeared where none had been. The chanting hummed again, faint at first, then building with my pulse. I followed it, crouching low, dodging the crew who glided instead of walking, their black eyes unblinking, their lips pulled into endless smiles. They didn't speak, but the silence in their presence was a warning. I had crossed into a place no passenger was meant to find. The chamber was alive when I entered. The ritual had already begun. The pool in the center glowed faintly, throwing sickly light across the walls. Hundreds of faces swam beneath its surface, mouths opening in wordless cries. Long hands of water clawed upward, twisting as if begging for help. These weren't illusions. They were real, bound to the ship, chained by fear and ritual. My stomach dropped. The captain's gaze cut through the crowd. He didn't shout or move quickly. He just raised one hand, and the pool surged in answer. Water lunged toward me like jaws snapping shut. I scrambled aside, stumbling close to the edge, my camera hitting the ground, capturing faces and shadows in blurred streaks. The captain's voice carried softly but with force. You shouldn't be here. But now that you are, you can either serve or vanish. I understood then. This wasn't about killing. It was about surrender. The ship didn't need mercy. It demanded obedience. I remembered a line from the journal. The ship's offerings were chosen by fear and acknowledgement. It thrived on being noticed. If I ignored it, if I pretended it wasn't real, maybe I could survive. But if I fought, if I resisted, it would consume me whole. So I tried. I crouched low, keeping my eyes away from the crew, moving along the walls. Quietly, I whispered to myself again and again, "You don't exist. You don't exist. You don't exist." The shadows wavered. The chanting broke rhythm. The faces in the water writhed, unsettled, as if confused. The pool pulsed slower. For a moment, I thought I had tricked it, but then a sound rolled through the chamber, a deep, terrible laugh. The captain stepped closer, the water rising with him like a heartbeat. His black eyes pierced into mine. "You think you can hide? The ship already owns you." My throat tightened. Panic flared. But I clutched my camera and fired the flash again and again. The light cracked across the chamber. For a breath, the shadows drew back, recoiling, the water spraying violently. I ran. I sprinted through halls that warped and stretched, stairways that led nowhere, corridors folding back into the chamber itself. The ship twisted into a maze, trapping me in its body. Every path ended in darkness, in whispers, in reaching hands. At last, I forced open a small service door on the lowest deck. A narrow stairwell, barely wide enough to crawl, led upward. I climbed, lungs burning, adrenaline driving me. Behind me, the chanting rose again, louder, furious. A storm of voices joined as one. My ears rang with it. I dragged myself onto the upper deck, collapsing under the black sky. The sea stretched without end. No land, no rescue, only chaos in every direction. Lightning struck, waves slammed. My body shook with exhaustion, but I knew the truth now. The Aurora tide didn't care if I escaped. It could wait forever. It would follow me anywhere, whispering, remembering, and I would carry it always. The chanting echoed still, lingering in my head. The faces pressed into the water burned into my sight. Some ships never let their passengers go. I didn't dare close my eyes. Every shadow moved. Every gust of wind carried a voice. My hands shook as I lifted the camera, scrolling through the photos. Faces glared back. People I had never met. Crew with eyes like voids, broken reflections of me caught in glass. The sun sank, painting the sea blood red. The Aurora tide groaned, its frame bending, breathing in time with my fear. A low hum rose in my chest, matching the pulse of the ship. I tried to run, but the deck stretched, bending, twisting under me. The horizon fell away into endless black. Shapes rose from the water. Faces I almost recognized, pleading eyes half-formed. They hovered. They reached, but they never touched. They were showing me what awaited. A shadow formed behind me. The captain stood still, calm, unhurried. "You cannot leave," he said. "The ship remembers. It chooses. And now it has chosen you." I spun and ran toward the bow. Waves licked the sides, forming hands of water. Their faces twisted into masks of pain. Every step brought them closer, feeding the hunger of the ship. And then I realized escape wasn't about distance. It was about surrender. The Aurora tide wanted obedience. It had already bound me with fear. I felt the pull before I saw it. My legs buckled as the deck rippled, forming a pool of mirrored water. My reflection stared up at me. Not myself, but a pale, hollow-eyed version smiling in silence. The captain extended a hand. "It's easier if you accept it," he said. "Some fight. Some surrender. Either way, the ship keeps them. But those who surrender, endure." The pool surged upward, icy hands wrapping around my legs. I screamed, thrashing, but the deck itself bent beneath me, spiraling into a staircase that led nowhere. The chanting thundered, filling my head, rattling my bones. And then silence. I opened my eyes to calm seas, sunlight, the ship pristine against the horizon. I could breathe again. For a moment I thought I had made it. Then I saw the logbook open on my desk. A single line had been added in fresh ink. Laia Martinez taken. A knock came at the door. 3 slow, steady taps. My blood froze. The porthole fogged, and through the mist I saw her, my reflection, but not mine. Hollow eyes, pale skin, lips curled into a smile that wasn't mine. I knew the truth then. I hadn't escaped. I had only changed. The Aurora tide never frees its passengers. It never will. And when new travelers board tomorrow, it will already be waiting. "Welcome aboard." My panic was feeding it. The captain appeared behind me, calm as always. "Understanding comes too late," he said. "Some fight, some surrender." Both served the ship the same. I raised my camera, snapping pictures of the journal and the glowing pool, hoping the flash might break the spell. For a second it worked. Faces pulled back, shapes rippled, the chanting faltered. But then the water lunged forward, rising like a living thing, pulling at me. I fought, trying to get away, but the hallways bent out of shape. Doors melted into walls. Stairs stretched forever, winding with no end. The storm outside raged, matching the madness within. The ship was no longer wood and metal. It was alive, twisting reality itself into a trap. Fear clawed at me, but desperation forced me to think. I remembered the journal's words. The ship fed on fear, on being seen, on being recognized. If I could stay calm, if I could deny it the satisfaction, maybe I could survive. I whispered to myself like a prayer. "You are not here. You are not seen. You do not exist." The shadows froze. The chanting slipped out of rhythm. The faces in the pool wavered, twisting with doubt. I inched backward, careful not to meet their eyes, until I found a service ladder bolted to the wall. My hands shook, but I climbed, every rung a fight against unseen hands dragging me down. At last I emerged onto the observation deck. The sea stretched wide, but the storm had swallowed everything. Waves smashed against the hull. Lightning split the sky, and in those flashes I saw shapes under the water. Human forms, floating, watching. Then I understood. Escape wasn't about distance. It wasn't about hiding. The ship never let anyone go. The only chance was to outlast it, to trick it, to resist its hunger with will alone. But the ship was patient. It would wait forever. I had survived for now, but the whispers had sunk into my head. They twisted around my thoughts, reminding me that the eternal horizon always waited, always watching, and when it chose again, it would be final. The storm rose higher, monstrous waves slamming over the deck, lightning carving the sky, the silver shards. I clutched the journal and my camera, heart pounding, knowing the ship was inside my mind, watching every flicker of fear. The whispers grew louder, repeating my name, promising that one slip was all it needed to claim me. I staggered through the corridors, but there was nowhere safe. Hallways stretched endlessly, stairs looped back onto themselves, shadows bent light into shapes that shouldn't exist. Beneath it all, I felt the heartbeat of the ship itself, pulsing with hunger, growing stronger with every ounce of fear I failed to smother. I tried to resist. I tried to fight. But then I felt water creeping along my boots, cold and alive, crawling up my legs. Faces pushed through the surface. Passengers I had seen vanish. Crew with eyes like pits, all reaching, their mouths opening and closing in silent pleas. At the far end of the deck, the captain appeared again, calm, steady, unblinking. His eyes pierced mine. "You can't escape. You are already part of the cycle." The words from the journal came back. Acknowledgement was power. If I denied my fear, denied what I saw, maybe I could last. I whispered my mantra again, soft but steady. You do not exist. You are not here. You are nothing. The water slowed. The shadows wavered. The storm paused as if the ship itself was considering me. I stepped forward, ignoring the reaching hands, my heart pounding so loud it drowned the whispers for a moment. But then the pool in the center of the deck rippled, and I saw it, my reflection staring back. Not me, but a pale double, eyes hollow, lips curled in a quiet smile. The truth struck me like lightning. This was my fate if I surrendered, to become part of the ship itself, a voice in its chorus, another hollow face beneath the waves. I stumbled back, slipping on the wet deck, and the water surged higher, wrapping cold hands around me. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the storm, by the whispers, by the living consciousness of the ship. The deck bent, twisting into a staircase spiraling down into endless dark. I fell, dragged into nothing. Then, suddenly, light. Sun pierced the clouds. The sea was calm. The ship gleamed as though none of it had happened. My chest heaved. Relief shook me. Maybe I had survived. But when I reached my cabin, I saw the logbook open on my desk. One new line in wet black ink. Marcus Hale taken. 3 soft knocks tapped at my door. Steady, patient. I turned toward the porthole. The glass fogged, and a face stared back. My face, but wrong. Hollow eyes, a smile that wasn't mine. I knew the truth. Survival wasn't freedom. The ship had already claimed me. My fear, my thoughts, my awareness, all part of it now. The eternal horizon waits, endless, patient. And when it hungers again, it will take another. Welcome aboard. Story 4. I thought cruises were supposed to be relaxing. Sun, sea, and a week away from life's chaos. My name is Naomi Chen. I'm a travel vlogger from Los Angeles, and I booked the celestial wave to film glittering interiors and exotic ports for my channel. I wanted sunsets, laughter, a touch of luxury, not nightmares. The first night the ship looked like a dream. Chandeliers sparkled like stars. The polished decks glowed in the sunset. The crew welcomed passengers with flawless smiles. I filmed everything, cheerful narration on my lips, not noticing how shadows lingered too long in the corners. By nightfall, something strange stirred. A low humming rose from the lower decks. It wasn't engines, wasn't waves, but a note that buzzed inside my ribs. Curious, I picked up my camera and followed. The corridors bent strangely, twisting into new shapes. Doors I had passed earlier were gone, replaced with tight passages leading to dim-lit rooms. Shadows flickered, moving against the light, forming human shapes that melted when I turned my eyes. In one room I found a theater, abandoned yet untouched. Red velvet seats faced a stage where one spotlight glowed. On the stage stood a puppet, human-sized, dressed like a captain, its eyes black pits. Its head tilted toward me. Its lips didn't move, but I heard it whisper, "You're next." My breath froze. I stumbled back. The walls groaned, the lights flickered, and the humming deepened, voices layered into one sound. I told myself it was my nerves, but my camera proved otherwise. It caught what I couldn't see, shadows shifting, whispers caught in the air, movement just beyond my sight. When I returned to my cabin, my stomach dropped. My footage was wrong. It showed places I hadn't filmed, endless corridors, faceless passengers, and reflections of myself smiling with eyes that weren't mine. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on my door. My blood ran cold. No one should have been there. I crept to the peephole. The hallway was empty. Still, the knocking continued, steady from the other side. My skin chilled with the realization. The celestial wave wasn't just a ship. It was alive, aware, and it had turned its attention to me. That night I lay awake, the camera clutched to my chest while the humming swelled into a rhythm that shook the walls. Shadows slid across the cabin, joining, twisting, merging. My porthole darkened. My reflection looked back, but it wasn't me. It smiled, lifting a hand, beckoning. I understood then. Once the ship noticed you, there was no undoing it. The celestial wave didn't sail. It waited. It watched. And it chose. Sleep never came. Every groan of wood, every brush of wind against the glass was its voice. By dawn, I made a choice. I needed answers. I grabbed my camera and went to the lower decks, following the same humming that had haunted me since the first night. The air grew thick, damp with rot and salt. Corridors shifted again, warping into paths I didn't recognize. Stairs appeared where none should have been. Doors opened into rooms that couldn't exist. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam caught in shadows bending at impossible angles. Then, in a wide storage room, I froze. Dozens of puppets lined the shelves, identical to the one from the stage. Each wore the same captain's uniform, or crew attire, their eyes hollow and unblinking. I stepped closer, heart in my throat. One tilted its head, just slightly, as if acknowledging me. My camera captured movement I couldn't see with my eyes. Then came the whispers, clear as speech now, layered voices pressing against my ears. "You're next. Join us." The voices surrounded me, coming from the walls, the floor, even the air itself. I spun around, heart pounding, and realized the shadows were alive. They stretched toward me, fingers clawing at the empty space. Suddenly, I felt a pull dragging me toward the center of the deck, toward a round hatch I had noticed before. The floor rippled like water, bending as if the ship itself was forcing me forward. I tried to fight it, but every step seemed inevitable. When I opened the hatch, I saw a chamber full of black water, rippling unnaturally. Faces floated beneath the surface. Vanished passengers, eyes hollow, mouths forming silent pleas. The puppets stood along the edges, their hands raised as if conducting the pool like an orchestra. At the center, I saw it, my own reflection. Pale, eyes empty, lips curved into a silent smile. My stomach twisted. The ship didn't just trap bodies. It trapped minds, presence, identity. The captain appeared then, walking calmly, his footsteps echoing. "Resistance only strengthens the ritual," he said quietly. "You can flee, but the ship always takes what it wants." Panic flared in my chest, but I forced myself to remember the journal. It had spoken of survival, denying fear, denying recognition. I whispered the words under my breath. "I am not here. I do not exist. You cannot see me." The water slowed. The shadows faltered. The puppets paused, frozen for a moment as though confused. I edged backward, careful not to meet the eyes of the figures, until I found a ladder leading up. I climbed quickly, heart racing. Above, the storm mirrored the chaos below. Lightning slashed across the sky. Waves pounded the hull. Yet for a breath, I felt safer. That's when the truth sank in. The celestial wave didn't kill immediately. It fed slowly, on fear, on recognition. Survival was possible only by hiding from its attention. But the ship was patient. It waited, always choosing when to claim. On the upper deck, no comfort waited. Waves smashed against the ship, lightning splitting the horizon in jagged silver shards. My hands shook around the camera, flashlight beam darting. Shadows stretched unnaturally, merging with rain and wind. I realized the ship wasn't just in the lower decks. It was everywhere, pressing in from every shadow, every reflection. Then they came, the puppets. They crawled from corners, glided along railings, slid across the wet floor, their hollow eyes fixed on me, their movements smooth like liquid. Behind them, the captain's shadow moved, steady, unyielding, guiding it all. I tried to run, but the deck warped beneath me. Steps looped back, corridors stretched forever. The wind whispered my name. Panic clawed inside me, but I forced my breath steady. I whispered again. I do not exist. You cannot see me. One puppet slid toward me, hand out, wooden fingers bending with sharp cracks. My camera flashed, and for a moment, the puppet recoiled. But the shadows surged harder, multiplying. The water spilled up from below, curling over the deck. Liquid fingers reaching. Faces shimmered within, mouths open in silent screams. The ship was twisting not just the world, but my mind, building nightmares to break me before it consumed me. I stumbled backward, gripping the railing as the storm raged harder. Lightning flashed, and in the porthole I saw myself, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling calmly. My chest clenched. That was what I'd become if I lost. Then I noticed a small hatch near the stern, almost hidden. Maybe an exit, maybe a trap. I had no choice but to try. I ran. The puppets slid after me, chasing like liquid shadows. The hatch opened into a narrow hallway lined with mirrors. Every reflection showed me, but wrong. Dozens of versions, pale, smiling, all reaching. My pulse hammered. The ship was mocking me, showing what I'd become. I kept my eyes down, muttering the mantra over and over. I pushed through until I burst onto the side deck. Rain lashed my face. Wind tore at me. For the first time, the open sea spread before me, black and endless. No shadows followed. The puppets stopped at the threshold. Through the storm, the captain's voice whispered, "You endure for now." I collapsed to the deck, shaking, soaked, barely breathing. I had survived, but survival was only temporary. The celestial wave didn't just take bodies. It lingered, waiting, always watching. And I knew one day it would claim me fully. The storm raged, the ocean roared, the ship watched. The storm never ended. Lightning carved the sky, thunder rolling like a beast's growl. I clutched my camera to my chest, heart hammering so loud I swore the ship could hear it. The celestial wave was everywhere, not just around me, but inside me. I felt it probing, whispering, testing. The side deck narrowed, twisting into a corridor that shouldn't exist. Shadows stretched into human forms that mirrored my every move. Each step felt forced, chosen by the ship. The puppets appeared again, sliding from the walls, hollow eyes fixed on me. I whispered the mantra, "You cannot see me. I do not exist." For a moment, the shadows slowed. The water pulled back. I thought I had won. But then came the mirror room again. Smaller now, yet packed with reflections. Dozens of me, pale, smiling, eyes empty. I tried to turn away, but every exit bent back. Puppets circled the mirrors, bending the reflections, showing futures I didn't want. In all of them, the storm raged, the ocean pulsed, the ship ruled. At the far end, the captain appeared, eyes black, voice calm. "You can resist, you can survive," but the ship always claims. Every passenger becomes part of the chorus. It is inevitable. A hand of water shot from the mirrors, seizing my ankle. I screamed, stumbling, almost falling into the reflective pool. My camera flashed, capturing the whirl of water, puppets reaching, my reflection smiling. The ship was teaching me, resistance delayed, but never prevented. I bolted blindly, whispering the mantra until it broke on my lips. Puppets multiplied, mirrors twisted, showing infinite versions of me, each more broken than the last. Then came the final truth. The ship didn't just feed on fear, it fed on identity. Every person lost became part of it. Their self dissolved into its endless hunger. At last, I collapsed on the upper deck, drenched, gasping. The storm stilled slightly. The puppets slipped into the shadows, their hollow eyes still watching. The captain's voice, soft, certain, carried on the wind. Endurance is only temporary. Acceptance is forever. I turned to the porthole. My reflection stared back, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling. For the first time, I knew I wasn't free. I had survived the night, yes, but the ship had already claimed me. My mark was set. I would never leave without becoming part of its ritual, another piece of the celestial wave. The storm roared, the waves slammed, and the puppets waited. The ship's hunger was endless, its patience eternal, and I was its next tale. Welcome aboard. Music. Story 5. I never believed in haunted ships until I boarded the Oblivion Star. My name is Daniel Ortiz. I'm a documentary filmmaker from Miami, used to chasing storms, myths, and abandoned places. I signed up for this luxury cruise to film a lifestyle special, never expecting to document a nightmare. The first night, the ship was dazzling. Neon lights shimmered across the decks, orchestral music drifted from the ballroom, and laughter mixed with the salt air. Camera in hand, I filmed everything, narrating cheerfully. It was perfect. Too perfect. Around midnight, I noticed something wrong. Cabin 1313, a room long decommissioned, was lit. A shadow flickered behind the curtains, moving in rhythm like a ritual. When I approached, the door was locked, yet faint chants drifted from inside. My curiosity silenced my caution. I filmed from the hallway, zooming in. Faces appeared behind the window. Passengers I had never seen before. Their eyes were hollow, their lips moving as if in silent prayers. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they were gone. The door swung open on its own, showing nothing but empty darkness. The corridors began to twist unnaturally. Stairwells bent in strange directions. Walls shifted and hallways curved back into themselves like a maze. The crew smiled politely when I passed them, but in their eyes was something unsettling, as though they knew a secret they would never say out loud. One stewardess whispered softly as she passed me, "Don't go near 1313. It chooses." I returned to my cabin, reviewing the footage with shaking hands. On screen, shadows moved where none had been. Whispers overlapped my own narration, one phrase repeating over and over. "Join us." Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind against the porthole sounded like a warning. And then the truth struck me with a weight that made my chest tighten. The ship wasn't just haunted, it was alive. It was watching. It was choosing. By dawn, I had a plan. I would go to 1313, film everything, and try to understand what it wanted. But deep inside, I already knew curiosity here came with a price. The Oblivion Star never allowed questions without consequences. I could feel it waiting, patient, pulling me in. Cabin 1313 was calling, a low vibration inside my chest. With camera steady, I crept through the twisting corridors. Every step echoed unnaturally, as though the ship itself repeated them back. The walls stretched long, staircases circled back, and shadows crept along the rails as if guiding me. When I reached the cabin, the door was slightly open. A sharp metallic scent spilled out, mingling with the salty air. My flashlight beam flickered across the room. The floor was wet, reflecting the pale light. At the center lay a circle of water, perfectly still and black. Faces appeared beneath the surface, passengers I had seen earlier. Some smiled faintly, others screamed in silence. Around the pool, puppets dressed in crew uniforms stood motionless, eyes empty, hands moving in gestures that felt ritualistic. My breath shook, but I lifted the camera, zooming in. The pool rippled. My own reflection stared back, but wrong. Eyes hollow, skin pale, mouth curled into a mocking smile. The whispers rose, calling my name. My stomach turned cold. Panic burned through me, but I forced my breathing steady. Then without sound, the captain stepped into the room. His shoes pressed against the wet floor, but no splash came. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly, "but now that you're here, watch closely." The ship chooses, and the chosen serve. The water burst upward, shaping into hands that reached for me. I stumbled backward, camera shaking in my grip. The puppets began to advance. The shadows along the walls twisted, leaning toward me. The ship was alive, feeding on the act of being seen, on the fear in every breath. I remembered advice hidden in the strange notes from my earlier footage. Denial delayed it. Whispering quickly, I recited, "I am nothing. You cannot see me." The watery hands froze midair. The shadows trembled as though confused. For a breath, it worked. I backed into the hallway, but the ship had shifted again. Doors opened to nowhere. Staircases spiraled endlessly. Whispers followed, louder, closer. Cabin 1313 glowed faintly behind me, like a reminder that it wasn't finished with me. That's when the true horror became clear. The ship didn't trap only bodies. It trapped awareness itself. It fed on those who looked, who recorded, who feared. Tonight I realized I was already marked. Even as I reached the upper deck, the whispers didn't stop. They were inside me. Join us. Join us. I knew now survival wasn't about running. It was about hiding, about pretending to be invisible, hoping the ship would lose interest. But patience was never its weakness. The storm above gave me no comfort. Lightning ripped across the sky. Waves slammed the hull with bone-rattling force. My flashlight cut through the rain, but every shadow seemed alive, sliding along the walls, melting into the storm. Then I saw them, the puppets, rows of them gliding silently across the rails and climbing walls. Their empty eyes locked onto me. Behind them, the captain's shadow flitted quietly, always present. I tried to run, but the deck bent and folded, paths circling back to the same cursed spot. Panic clawed my chest, but I held my breath steady and muttered, "I do not exist. You cannot see me." Then the water surged again, crawling along the deck like icy fingers. Faces shimmered within it, mouths opening in silent screams. I realized the ship bent more than space. It bent thought, bending reality itself into a trap. I stumbled toward the observation deck. In the porthole, I caught my reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling. My body shivered. That was my fate unless I found a way to resist. A hatch appeared at the stern, narrow, almost hidden. I bolted for it. The puppets glided after me, their movements impossibly smooth. The ship itself pulsed as though guiding me, daring me to continue. I pulled open the hatch and stepped into a long corridor of mirrors. Reflections filled every surface, showing dozens of me, each pale, each smiling, each trapped. The puppets drifted among the mirrors, their hands twisting the reflections, showing me futures that felt inevitable. My chest pounded, fear clawing its way up my throat. Reality itself was the weapon here. I shut my eyes, whispering the mantra faster and faster. When I opened them, the water had stilled, the puppets frozen. Carefully, I edged forward, step by step, until the door at the end gave way. I stumbled out onto the side deck. Rain struck my face. Wind ripped at my clothes. The open sea stretched out, black and endless. For the first time, shadows didn't follow. I collapsed, gasping, drenched, trembling. I had survived, but only for now. The oblivion star didn't strike quickly. It waited. It watched. It chose carefully. And I knew it had chosen me. The storm raged harder. Waves slammed the hull. Lightning tore the sky apart. The voices of the ship swelled, carried by the wind. I gripped my camera, realizing survival was never about escape. It was about staying unseen. But the side deck twisted again, narrowing into another corridor of mirrors. Every reflection showed me hollow, pale, smiling. Puppets glided along the walls, their movements fluid and wrong. At the far end, the captain's shadow loomed, calm, eyes locked on me. A hand of water struck up from below, seizing my ankle. In its depths, faces of the vanished passengers screamed silently, trapped forever. Then I understood. The Oblivion Star didn't just take bodies. It claimed awareness, identity, consciousness itself. Every person who watched, who recorded, became part of its ritual. I whispered the mantra, desperate. I am nothing. I do not exist. For a moment the water faltered. The shadows slowed. But the mirrors rippled again. My reflection smiled wider, stepping closer, reaching for me. I fell backward onto the wet deck, camera still filming, recording every impossible movement. The captain's voice drifted across the wind. Resistance only delays the truth. Acceptance is eternal. Cold fear twisted inside me. I had survived the storm with my body, but my mind, my very awareness, was already feeding the ship. Every word I spoke, every glance, every shiver of fear was a nourishment for it. The Oblivion Star was patient, eternal. I sank to my knees, waves slapping against my legs, whispers filling my head. The puppets paused just beyond the corridor, still watching, waiting for the final moment when the ship fully claimed me. My reflection in the porthole smiled calmly, certain of what was coming. I knew then there was no escape. There would never be escape. The storm roared, the ship pulsed, and the puppets waited. Welcome aboard.